New World is a game that's had a lot of criticism over its short lifetime. With the latest expansion dropping, it has once again opened itself up for further scrutinization. Whether you're a New World fanboy or a New World hater, it's hard to deny that this game has gone through quite a transformation since launch. And trust me, I know, I was there back in the beta.
Future's now, old man.
So if you're wondering what the current state of New World is and whether it's worth getting back into, stick around as I go over the highs and lows and everything else in between. And with that being said, let's jump into it. Depending on when you last played New World, you might be surprised by some of the latest changes. So with that being said, let's just do a quick summary as to what's newly been introduced to the game. Spring introduced us to Fellowship and Fire. This included a new season story, new expedition, a new heart rune. But it also included two significant updates. This was of course the new season pass, which is sort of like a battle pass and we'll talk about a bit later. And they also released arguably one of the best quality of life updates, the gear set storage. And the reason this change is so significant is because it allows you to carry multiple builds at once. So if you had a build for PvP, you can have that in your gear set and it won't weigh you down. The same with PvE and farming.
Oh, that's poggers, man!
This summer also brought in some new changes. This came in the form of transmogs, raid groups, cross-world outpost rush, and most importantly, the Sandworm Elite Trial. This was the actual big boss sandworm that we saw in Brimstone Sands, but we never really got to fight until now. And then finally, with this fall, we got the new expansion. We got Territory Influence Update, which is basically a new and improved way to open world PvP. A new story, one of the old zones got remodeled, a new expedition, a new weapon, and of course, mounts. And there's still more to come this winter, with the most important one being the cross-world arenas and expeditions. But let's be honest, the real reason that a lot of you are here clicking this video is to understand if the expansion is actually worth buying. So with that, let's take a deeper dive. So it seems that one of the biggest upsets about New World's latest expansion was the fact that you had to pay for it.
You're broke! You're fucking poor!
And with that comes some problems with monetization and pay to win.
Shut up! Oh my god, I don't care!
Now, arguably paying for expansions or DLCs is nothing new. It's something that we should come to expect when it comes to modern MMORPGs. It's reasonably priced. I mean, it doesn't cost as much as the entire game, which is always a good sign. And you can even buy the Elysian edition, which saves you, oh dear. But the question remains, is it pay to win to buy this DLC? Will you have an advantage over other players if you buy this expansion? And the simple answer is yes.
Then why don't you just fucking die already? Just give up and die.
Unfortunately, the DLC does have a minor case of pay to win. For instance, your base level goes from 60 to 65 and you can only get this if you have the DLC. This means that you'll have 30 extra tribute points over anyone with just the base game. Not only that, you'll have access to artifacts. That's right, they've introduced new gear items which are only unique to the first light zone, which of course you need the expansion for. Artifacts give you a unique bonus which other gear sets don't, and they can come in the form of one piece of jewelry, one body piece and one weapon, which means you can wear 3 artifacts at any given time. You will also be granted access to the new weapon, the Flail, which isn't necessarily OP at the moment, but you know, give it a couple of patches and we'll see. And lastly, not necessarily pay to win, but definitely a quality of life feature, you can have access to a mount, which means you can go from A to B a lot quicker than your peasant friends who are walking.
Feel the speed! The speed!
And of course, if you don't buy the DLC, you obviously won't be able to access First Light, which means if you had a bank there which you upgraded, well, you won't be able to go there anymore. It's no longer accessible. You're actually losing out. So, not necessarily pay to win, but somewhat a shady method of buying out DLC. I won't lie, I literally bought the DLC within the first 5 minutes of playing. I saw someone on a mount and I was like, yes, I want that. What's going on my horse? He's broken. His legs don't work anymore.
This is a superb piece of work. I'm going to buy a couple right now myself.
But is it worth the money? Personally, I think so. I like the new weapon, I like the new artifact, I like the new zone, and furthermore, I really love the mounts. I can't stand walking. Mounts were just a obvious choice, I guess. So is it worth the $24.99 I paid? Let's just say, compared to the price of the other stuff in the cash shop, it's definitely value for money. But anyway, let's go take a look at some of the positives about New World. The biggest improvement to the game, in my very biased opinion, was the introduction of influence races. This was a free update which basically encourages an entire zone to become an open world PvP battlefield, and it's
fucking delicious.
The way it works is quite simple. There will be 3 influence races daily, with each one lasting 45 minutes. Within a zone, there are 3 influence towers which factions will fight over. And of course, if you're on the winning side, you'll also get bonus rewards and a chance to declare war within that zone. But the best thing about it is that there's a lot of player participation. There's literally Zergs versus Zergs, small group versus small group, and of course your sweaty 1vX's. It reminds me of the early days of this game where everyone flagged for PvP, and overall it's just good, wholesome, clean fun. This encouragement to PvP is great to see, and I hope they come up with more ideas like this in the future. Another great improvement from my point of view is of course transmogs. This has allowed players to become more unique in their looks, and let's be honest, the character creation screen for New World was fucking terrible and never really gave you a sense of immersion. It was literally like making a generic NPC. However, with the ability to jazz up your outfit and dye even purchased outfits, it gives the game more variety and a way of players to express themselves, and we all know fashion is endgame. The Overland PvE is still relatively exciting. The level 60 plus zones aren't always the easiest to solo, which encourages players to group up and work together, which for me is the whole point in an MMORPG. I've got a mic. Hello? Hi? Anyone got a mic? 3, 2, 1, uwu? Can I get a uwu? 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 Sadly though, the game still suffers from shy player syndrome. The amount of times I've tried to use local voice chat and players just ignore me or tell me to fuck off is actually hilarious.
You're muted, bro. Shut the fuck up.
But at least the game is becoming slowly more social, and you never know, players might eventually start to use VoIP. I mean, it's there, it's base game, why aren't people using it? So weird. The PvE is still fun and forever improving with the introduction of more expeditions and of course the Sandworm trial. Let's hope we see this continue in the future, and let's hope they keep it free. And they've even introduced jump puzzles and time trials, which might not seem like a big deal or even challenging until you come to the realization that they've actually designed them to be quite devious, so that if you do fall, you'll land in water and of course drown because you can't swim.
I'm slowly drifting to.
Gear score has been redesigned and once again upped to 700. This means gypsums are only ever really used for improving heart runes or recreating named gear. So less grindy, more farmy, I guess. And lastly, the battle pass is somewhat of a double-edged sword. I personally am a fan of battle passes as they give players something to work towards. Unlike dailies, they don't feel like a chore and more of a reward for playing the game, which is always nice. However, as good as a battle pass is, it can also lead to issues around monetization, which we'll look at in the next segment. One of the biggest issues since day one has been the server capacity. If there's one thing that needs urgently addressing, it's the fact that there are so many servers to choose from as opposed to one mega server per region. It's so easy for servers to suddenly become dead, and there are so many factors which can cause a server to suddenly die, such as a guild quitting, maybe the factions are very imbalanced, or simply players just don't pick that server because it's got a stupid name. Either way, it's been a glaring issue since day one, and we've seen it time and time again where they introduce new servers, they eventually die, so people have to keep moving around. 3,000 players per server just isn't enough, especially when you take into account the Steam charts, where numbers can vary between 25,000 and 40,000. It makes it very bitty when it comes to selecting a server. Another issue for me is OPR. I just don't find it a fun form of PvP. It feels very linear in the way it works. It's a back and forth between the outposts, and there's not much horizontal play. Yes, you have the bosses you can fight to stop the clock, but it's too, I don't know, it's not exciting enough. Maybe it's just been played too much and it needs to be freshened up a bit. Banks also need to be centralized. It was a good idea at the start when you had to travel between towns, but now that you can fast travel and it doesn't cost anything, it just seems very tedious to have the separate banks. And there's nothing worse than trying to find something and having to go through that list to each different city just to find some iron ore. Another issue for me is your Azoth limit. I don't understand why it's still set to 1,000 when it's so easy to acquire. So if you do want any more Azoth, you have to then salvage some suspended Azoth, and it's just this whole circle of fuckery. And then my last point, which is probably the most important point, is the sense that pay to win is just round the corner. They're slowly introducing more monetized items into the game, and it just feels like eventually the cash shop's going to open up and there'll be stuff in there for sale which will be pay to win. As it stands, there's a lot of pay for convenience in this game as it is. I mean, just look at the premium battle pass. You can argue that the items in there aren't necessarily the best, but it still gives you an advantage over someone who doesn't have the premium battle pass. Which brings me to my next point, which is of course the future of New World. As you can tell by the ominous music that I'm playing, the future of New World might not necessarily be as bright as we may hope. And before you decide to ream me out in the comment section, just understand I am a fan of this MMO. The problem that this game faces was because of the abysmal launch day it had, it has been trying to recuperate its losses ever since day one. The first year was spent addressing quality of life issues and bug fixes, and just trying to reassure people this wasn't a scam MMO. Monetization was very low on the agenda because they had a bigger issue, which was that they lost the players' trust. So how did they win players back? Well, of course, it was with Brimstone Sands, which was a free expansion for anyone who already had a copy of the game. And you know what? It worked. People flooded back to the game, and with the introduction of fresh start servers, it was like a brand new MMO, and people loved it. Since Brimstone, they've slowly been introducing monetization, be it with new skins, XP boosters, the battle pass, and of course, transmogs. And naturally, with the latest expansion, which is a paid for expansion, they paywalled the level cap. Right now, that doesn't seem like a big issue, it's only 5 levels. But what if they do it on the next expansion? It then becomes 10 levels, and then the expansion after that could become 15 levels. And you can suddenly see there's going to be a bit of a power creep if you don't go out and buy every expansion available. And the jury is still out on the flail. Right now it seems quite balanced, but how long before they decide to let it become a slightly more powerful than all the other weapons? And of course this is the only weapon behind a paywall. The mission statement at the start was that they didn't want a pay to win cash shop, but as time has gone on, stuff has gone in there which you could argue is pay to win. XP boosters can be seen as a pay to win item. And there is one more thing which is of concern to me to the future of this game. And maybe it's looking too far ahead, but you have to remember, Amazon are making a new MMO in the form of Lord of the Rings. I'm not saying that this is going to replace New World, but you can imagine that they would want all their best resources going to this new Lord of the Rings IP, because let's be honest, it's going to be a big money maker. And with that, what happens to the likes of New World? Would it suddenly drop off? Would it suddenly have less updates? Who knows? So why am I playing this ominous music? Simply because when it comes to the future of New World, it's hard to say where it will be in a couple years from now. And let's be honest, no one wants to invest their time in a dead or dying MMO. As much as I'm not certain about the future of New World, I have to say it has been a breath of fresh air in the MMORPG market. This title could have easily rolled over and died and been forgotten about, however Amazon stuck at it and they have produced one of the top 5 MMORPGs currently out there on the market. Like many titles in this genre, there are concerns about monetization. As it stands for me, New World is sort of in this grey area, still yet to be properly defined. They've done great work to improve this game over the last couple of years, and I can only hope it grows and becomes bigger and better. However, if any of these other MMOs currently being developed, such as Ashes of Creation or PAX D, actually come out, then who's going to play New World? What will this game offer which these other titles won't? And in all honesty, I'm salivating at the thought of New World but with a Lord of the Rings theme, which is what I hope Amazon will come out with. But time will tell on that one. I mean, they already cancelled it once, so it might not ever come out. Who knows? So to summarise the current state of New World, it's safe to say it's in a better state than it has been in the past. But the question still remains, can it remain consistent and can it keep that player population? So if, like me, you've been away from New World, now might be the best time to jump in and give it another go. And on that bombshell, I'm going to end the video. As always though, if you want to see more of my content, please subscribe, maybe leave a like to help the algorithm gods, and I'll leave a couple of videos on the screen for you right now, which you might enjoy. And also, a massive thank you to my YouTube members and patrons. Catch you in the next one. Bye bye.